Hey, Chris Lipe here, excited to bring you How to Sing Like Jack White. A lot of you have been asking for this one, so I'm looking forward to doing it for you. If we're going to truly examine and internalize what Jack White does, we need to be willing to throw off any expectations about our own voice and try lots of unconventional, cartoonish sorts of things. And you'll be amazed if you really do this, how much you'll actually learn about what your voice can really do. If you like this approach and you want to go deeper with it, click the link below and join my free vocal course. I have all sorts of things in there that will help you think about singing completely differently than maybe you ever have, and help you take things that you wouldn't have normally even thought could help your singing and find out that they really, really do. All right, example 1, and I really should do this with more singers, but I feel it's incredibly important as we get into Jack White. Here's example 1.
I think back in the day, it was easier to sort of get started with rolling on a tour because you could go and play some small clubs, and before people were filming and everything in the internet, you could just go out and test things out.
Speech resonance, normal guy talking. There's even a little bit of like this, I think back in the day, not quite like that, but
I think back in the day it was
a little bit. I think back in the day, where you can hear he's sort of talking maybe at the bottom of his speech resonance, but at the same time, he could probably go a little lower, but there's some gruffness, and there's some definite low, if you were to listen to this.
I think back in the day, it was easier to sort of get started.
You wouldn't say like high tenor necessarily. You wouldn't say, oh, wow, that guy's got it. You listen to some guys talk and you just know that they have this thin sounding, high pitched speech voice. Jack White is not one of those people. But you listen to almost all the stuff that he sings, and it is not there. It is not in speech. There's something else going on. And for so many years, I didn't make this connection that there are all sorts of singers, Tom York, Chris Cornell, Chris Martin, Zach from Rage Against the Machine are just a few examples of people who, Matt Bellamy certainly, who they tend to sing in this otherworldly, other character. We have to keep this in mind with Jack White, and we have to keep it in mind with our own voices. Our voices are not limited to the way that our speech voice works. Our speech voice is a great way to be in touch with certain aspects of our voice, but absolutely not limited to that. And guys like Jack White understand this profoundly. They can make all sorts of noises. But you know what? I'll also say this. I don't think they went into singing at all going, I need to not use my speech resonance, and I need to use lots of compression, and I need to position my larynx in certain ways. Although we're going to talk about some of that here. He is playing a part. He's playing a theatrical part. He's being a character. And in many ways, it sounds like he's part of some Disney cartoon when you really isolate some of these things. And so by us being able to go from our normal speech and then listen to what he's doing and go to an extreme, like the things that I'm going to be doing are going to be even more extreme in some cases than what Jack White does, and then we're going to dial it back in. So keep his speech resonance in your mind.
I think back in the day, it was easier to sort of get started with it.
Okay, now this, example 2.
My veins are blue.
Not my veins are blue. It's not even that. It's this separate sound.
My veins are blue.
Speech?
I think back in the day,
My veins are blue.
You can argue, oh, he's older there, he's just smoked or whatever. I don't know. You could argue lots of things, but this is going to be really exciting. The next time that you're shouting at someone across the way or up the stairs or whatever, there are kind of 2 ways to raise your voice. And this is going to set the stage for us approaching a lot of the stuff that Jack White does. You can do the Kiefer Sutherland thing, right? Like, I'm going to put you in custody. I'm going to put you in custody. Where you're not allowing, you're pushing a lot more air through. And you're holding air back. You're compressing a little bit and getting some grit. But the pitch, even in speech, is not allowing you to go higher. You're not letting your voice sort of travel up in pitch relative to the dynamics that you're creating. Custody, 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 right? Versus, hey, you, hey, you, hey, you, hey, over there. Now, what I just did is I allowed my voice. I don't have a goal pitch. But as I get louder and I start passing more air, I allow my voice to crack a little. I allow my voice to push up into another realm.
My veins are blue.
Now you can hear at the beginning that he's definitely on a pitch, but then there's this sense of speech, this heightened pitch speech. My veins are blue. My veins are blue. He's not really going for a particular pitch. This is a mild example of what I'm going to, and a lot of other singers will call, cry. My veins. Let's take it a little bit more extreme. This is not, my veins are blue. We're lying solely on chest. If we were to really exaggerate it, it would be like, my veins are blue. This sense that we are a child or a cartoon imitating a child crying. That's gonna infuse something in our mind where if we're imitating that while we're yelling, hey, hey, observing what happens in our own voice, we're gonna be able to access this higher speechy sound, which is what he harnesses musically so well.
But I think bitches like the best of them.
Okay, now here, he's got that same thing going on. But I think bitches like the best of them.
But I think bitches like the best of them.
But there's this other sense. He's very rhythmic here with what he's saying. He's getting his mouth involved. There's this sense, and I've talked about this on other singers too. He's not saying, but I think bitches like the best of them. There's a vomiting, a transference of energy between back of mouth to front of mouth. And if I were to exaggerate this, but I think bitches like the best of them.
But I think bitches like the best of them.
But, there's this, and then you dial it back. But I think bitches like the best of them. But I think bitches like the best of them. Combined with, but I think bitches like the best of them. We're going to hear a lot more examples like what I just did in later examples. But if we can play with each one of these examples in that cartoon cry mindset, we are going to set ourselves up to blow our voices wide open with possibility. Next.
I was ready to go.
Aha! He's gone even higher here.
I was ready to go.
Go! I was ready to go! What is that, right? He's not even singing here. It's that, hey, hey, I was ready to go. And you can hear in other examples where you'll hear little cracks here and there. This is part of the character he's playing, but it's that mindset. Now let's unpack if screaming like a crying baby isn't helping you, think about it like this. We're going to push harder than we think we need to. We're going to hold back air here. We're going to raise our larynx. Twang, twang, right? And then we're going to compress more. So hold back more air, high larynx. And we're just going to talk like this, very nasal. Put a lot of stuff through your nose, a lot of air through your nose. And then try again. Be worried. Be a worried, crying baby character. And you're going to get some of what he's doing.
I was ready to go.
Well, I was ready to go. I was ready to go. And you got to let your voice crack in and out as you're dialing that in. It could sound like this. I was ready to go. 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 Go, go, go. no! Next. Okay, now this is a huge giveaway because listen, in context of what we just did, listen to the very last note. La, la. It's exactly what I just said, right? It's this nasal. There's pepperings of this in everything that he does. That nasal high larynx placement and that baby cry thing that's happening. La. He's combining this with almost a pseudo operatic la 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 la. Listen to how tacky I sound. Nasal. La, 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 la. You could say, well, he sounds way more nasal in that line than he does the other lines. Yes, that's part of the aura that he creates. And it's why his vocals are so dynamic and effective, because he dynamically changes without giving much thought to it. Next. Fingers. Okay. What we're going to do is we're going to try to imitate this exactly. Maybe even more extreme than what he's doing. I'm going to play this sample. Fingers. And this one. Blow out the candle. I mean, in this song, he is definitely playing even more of a character, but it lets us in to what we need to be aware of in our own voices, throwing off the limits, throwing off the preconceptions of what we should do or think we should sound like. He's clearly not doing that, and it makes his voice better and more dynamic because of it. Finger. Listen to this. Fing, fing, fing. Starting head voice. Fingers. Fingers, and then be worried and cry. Fingers. Doesn't close the R. It's almost like there's this fingers. Fingers. Now, let's go to this one. Blow out the candle. Listen to the crack on the blow out the candle. Blow out the candle. Oh, the words are coming out. I don't have this accent normally, but I'm going to assume it because it helps me get into character. Fingers, blow out the candle. Do this. Don't care what anybody else thinks and try to imitate this kind of thing. And then you can start dialing things back and pairing it with what you know about your voice and get some really interesting things happening. Fingers, blow out the candle. Fingers, oh, fingers, blow the candle. Please blow out the candle. Blow out the candle. Please blow. Blow. Next. Love is blindness. Okay. We see another side. We hear another side of what he's doing here. He gets into some neat grit, and he's lost, at least for the moment, that worried, crying baby. Love is blindness. To me, this sounds closer to his speech that we heard at the beginning than anything else he's done so far. But by going this direction for a little bit, and you'll see in some of the other samples, there's a really interesting thing that happens. He's actually calling on some of this blow out the candle as a way to make this love is blindness more accessible to him. If I'm already loose, and then I've already love, then when I go to dial it back, just like you saw me do a minute ago, when I go to dial it back, I am less conscious of the fact that I might make some noise I don't want to make. I have just thrown off all, worry in terms of that, right?
Love is blindness.
So if we try to go at this being super accurate, like, okay, I'm gonna love is blindness. Like that's kind of the worried approach, right? The thin mix, the dying cat, that kind of sound there.
Love is blindness.
But he's blindness. That's a belt. He's calling on his chest. So we need to call some of that in. So let's combine the two approaches. I'm going to get the pitches by being thin and worried. Love is blindness. Love is blindness. Then I'm going to bring my chest in and I'm going to create a balance. And this is going to be ugly until I find that balance. But as you learn to transfer your different characters around in your own mind and in your own voice, you're going to be able to call on these instantaneously, like he's able to do. Love is blindness! Now, I'm going to put more chest in, and that's going to cause me to crack. Love! 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 I'm going to live in the middle of that break. I'm going to utilize my support, dig in, use some compression. That's going to allow me to bring my chest up to where I was only able to hit it in that thin mix before. Love! There it is. Love is blindness! Now I need to work on those transitions. Yeah, love is blindness! I hope you can hear and see that it's about walking these lines of balance between different approaches and different extremes, feeling what your voice is doing and reacting. If you have pain, if you feel like you're getting tickles in the throat, I've done lots of other videos that, answer these questions. Where that grit should feel like it's coming from, where the distortion should feel like it's coming from. And join my free course if you want to feel more free with how your support works, how your breathing works, in order to be able to do some of this stuff freely without messing up your voice. Next. Now, love how he goes from this broken, you can tell that this is not an incredibly tight grit here. Yeah, oh, blindness, the motor sea. And then he goes to this head voice note. Yeah. A high, chesty, mixed note that's not as crying baby as some of the other ones, but desperate just the same. And he makes it more desperate by going into his head voice. This is a great drill. Hit a note in that's distorted and don't worry about cracking, where you're going up into that mixed voice that I've talked about so many times on this channel. And then break into falsetto in a way that's artistic. On a lower pitch than you were just at. That's the beauty of this line. But I can't express enough that, particularly with the Jack White aesthetic, we need to be in this mode. We need to be there before we can get to the things I just did. It's not about being super accurate and super technique. It's about being free and experimental and paying attention to what your voice feels like while you're doing it. Next. Now here, this is great. You can hear him going from that chestier, like bringing your chest up into your mix, back into that bright, back into the cry, right? So listen. got that grit at the beginning. Oh, my love! And by the end, even he's on a lower pitch, he's back to that bright, oh! Darker, chestier, higher, oh! Thinner, lower. Really neat way to work. And it's artistic, it's emotional, it's engaging. Next.
And even God herself.
Ooh.
And even God herself.
Now, this is great. This is not that high. There's lots of opportunities for us to experiment with intentional volatility in our voice. Putting intentional volatility in, it's getting his that kind of thing going, where you move a little bit, be volatile with your movements, and let that translate into your voice. But listen, let's point out some things here. And let your voice crack on and. This is not a high note. But practice letting your voice do that. And then listen to self. Self, and even God herself. There's a breakup there. So if I were to really unpack this, and even God herself, that's what I'd be doing. Slow, letting my voice crack from chest to head, and then finding those in-betweens that I've talked about in other videos and that I've demonstrated so far in this video. And even God yourself, and let things crack. But we want to be in control. Right? Even is super, like he's on it, right? There's volatility on either side. And even God herself. And even God herself. Oh, let's riff on that a little. I'm being super confident, and then I'm letting my voice crack into my head voice, and I'm letting it go. And even God herself, and even God herself, and even God herself. Oh, next. More of this, right? Any way that I can, anyway. This like abandoned volatility at the beginning. Anyway, letting your voice crack from head to chest. Any way that I can, That's how worried he sounds. Any way that I can, any way that I can. Oh, I'm crying. Any way that I can. Oh, combine that with confidence. Combine volatility with confidence, and you've got Jack White.
Well, every morning I deliver the news.
Well, every morning I deliver the news. What I like about this line is that he's very bright and gritty at the top. Compression, mixed voice, and in this case, worried, crying baby. Oh, every morning I deliver the news. But you can hear him darkening as he goes down.
Well, every morning I deliver the
News, very controlled and confident. We have the volatility at the beginning, and then it gets a little bit less to the do, right? Yeah. I am abandoned and then I'm authoritative. Abandoned and authoritative. You can hear and feel this when you listen. Put it in your own voice. Reckless abandon to I've got this, I'm in control. What would that sound like? Next.
Who's jealous of who?
Now here, I've included this one because he needs a lot of double tracking. But listen to how many different voices are going on. They're all him as far as I know. But he's got this. He's got the, who's jealous, who's jealous, who's jealous, who's jealous of who? It's like primarily chest voice. Who's jealous, who's jealous, who's jealous, who's jealous of who? Oh, right? But then he's got this completely out of pitch, this other guy over, who's jealous, who's jealous, who's jealous, who's jealous, who's jealous of who? Who's jealous, who's jealous, who's jealous? Try, within the confines of this rhythm, what can you do? Who's jealous, who's jealous, who's jealous, who's jealous of who? What can you do with your voice around that? Yeah. Who's jealous, who's jealous, who's jealous, who's jealous, who's jealous of who? Who's jealous, who's jealous, who's jealous, who's jealous, who's jealous of who? Oh, yeah. Who's jealous, who's jealous, who's jealous, who's jealous, who's jealous, who's jealous of who? Who's jealous, who's jealous, who's jealous, who's jealous of who? Who's jealous, who's jealous, who's jealous, who's jealous, who's jealous of who? Who's jealous, who's jealous, who's jealous, who's jealous of who? Who's jealous, who's jealous, who's jealous, who's jealous of who? Who's jealous, who's jealous, who's jealous, who's jealous of who? Who's jealous, who's jealous, who's jealous, who's jealous of who? Who's jealous? There's not a huge line between what sounds like complete useless fooling around and what is actually usable in a recording setting. Thank you all of you so much for watching and for suggesting Jack White. I do a lot of these because many comments that I get suggest these artists. So what you're doing when you comment and ask for things is working. So keep doing that. And again, if you'd like to take your voice to a level where you can be comfortable enough to experiment in this way and discover completely new things about it, click the link below and join my free vocal course. We'll see you for more.